Toledo, Ohio, 11:37 p.m. The streets were empty. The wind was bitter. A mother, a daughter, and a police officer with too much power found themselves on a collision course. "Mom, are we almost home?" A delicate voice floated from the back seat like a thread. Maya Bennett glanced quickly at the rearview mirror and nodded gently to her 10-year-old daughter, Lila, who was curled up, hugging her knees, her big round eyes dreamy after a restless nap. Maya's voice softened. "Yes, sweetheart. Just a little longer. Close your eyes and rest." Maya wore a sand-colored coat with the collar pulled up to her chin. On her ring finger was her wedding band, the only thing she had kept from her husband, who had died in a police shooting 7 years earlier. Since then, she had raised Lila alone, teaching during the day and volunteering as a community legal advisor at night. Everything she did was for her daughter. The government-issued black Ford SUV rolled steadily along Route 23. Maya wasn't speeding. She stayed in her lane. She hadn't done anything wrong. But in this city, sometimes being black and a woman was enough to make you a target. 2 blocks ahead, Officer Jake Harlan sat in his patrol car. The cabin light was dim, a cold styrofoam cup sat on the dashboard, and his phone screen glowed with a paused basketball game. Then he spotted it, a black SUV, unfamiliar, traveling alone, with federal plates. "Oh, this is interesting," Jake muttered, tossing his phone onto the passenger seat. He scratched his unshaven jaw, locking his eyes on the distant vehicle. He did not need a reason. He did not need suspicion. All he needed was a feeling and a badge. Jake flicked on his emergency lights. Red and blue flashed through the night like a battle cry. Maya caught the flashing lights in her rearview mirror and frowned slightly, but her reaction was calm, the reflexes of someone who knew the law. She signaled right, pulled over to the curb, placed both hands firmly on the steering wheel. Lila stirred awake. "Mom, what's happening?" Maya did not turn around. She spoke just loudly enough for her daughter to hear. "Probably just a routine check, sweetheart. Don't be afraid. Stay still." The patrol car door slammed open with a thud. Heavy footsteps pounded the pavement. Jake Harlan, over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered with a hand accustomed to resting near his holster, approached Maya's window. His flashlight shone directly into her face like an interrogation. No greeting, no introduction, no explanation. Just a command, "Step out of the vehicle." "Now!" Maya rolled down her window halfway, keeping her tone polite. "Officer, may I ask why I am being stopped?" "Lane change without signaling, unstable driving, signs of fatigue or substance influence," Jake barked. Maya frowned. "I was driving steadily. I have not been drinking. I am in a government vehicle. I am a federal employee." Jake smirked. "Oh, you think that puts you above the law?" "Number, I just believe I have the right to ask." A tense silence hung in the air. Then Jake's voice sharpened. "Are you refusing a lawful order?" "I'm simply asking for a reason. I am not refusing." But it was already too late. Jake yanked open the car door. Lila screamed. Maya reached for her phone, activated the camera, and started recording. "I am recording to protect myself," she said. Jake's eyes darted to the phone. He hesitated, seeing the camera lens. Then, propelled by bruised pride and anger, he drew his taser. A bolt of electricity shot forward, striking Maya in the shoulder. Her body convulsed violently and collapsed onto the cold pavement. Her face smashed against the cement. Her hair sprawled out. Her mouth opened without a sound. She had not resisted. She had no weapon. She had done nothing. Nothing but ask a question. Inside the car, Lila screamed, "Mommy! Mommy, no!" Jake stood there, taser still clenched in his hand. His face remained blank, his breathing steady, unhurried, devoid of emotion. In that moment, he thought he was still safe, still shielded by the system, still immune to the law. But he had made a fatal mistake. He had picked the wrong person. St. Vincent Hospital, Toledo, Ohio, 2:48 a.m. The air inside the hospital room was thick with the smell of antiseptic and the monotonous beep of a heart monitor. Cold white lights bathed Maya Bennett's pale face. A burning pain ran down her spine as she slowly regained consciousness. She moved her fingers, and a cold sensation, like being shocked all over again, crawled through her fragile skin. "Mom! Mommy!" A choked sob burst from the corner of the room. Maya turned her head very slowly, as if the weight of the world was pressing down on her. She met the tear-streaked face of her 10-year-old daughter, Lila. The little girl rushed forward and grabbed her mother's hand with all the strength her small body could muster. "I'm fine, Mommy. Don't worry. They said you're going to be okay." Lila's voice trembled, breaking at each word. Maya tried to smile, but her cracked lips barely moved. The physical pain was real, but the ache in her heart was far deeper. She had let her daughter witness it, had let her see her mother humiliated and brutalized right there on the street, as if she were a criminal. Soft footsteps echoed outside the door. It swung open. A doctor in a white coat and a nurse pushing an IV cart entered. "Ms. Bennett, you're awake. That's good. I'm Dr. Evans," he said, his voice gentle yet professional. "You fainted due to electrical shock. We have conducted a full examination. There's no internal damage, but you will need to stay for further observation for a few days." Maya nodded, trying to steady herself. Deep inside, she knew that while her body would heal, her dignity would not. 30 minutes later, the dim light from a bedside lamp cast long shadows across the wall. Maya sat upright in bed, wearing a loose hospital gown, her face gaunt but her eyes burning fiercely. She quietly checked her phone. A blinking message appeared. "Lauren Price, civil rights attorney. I am on my way." At that moment, a tall, slender woman in a charcoal suit knocked and entered. "Ms. Bennett, I'm Lauren Price. I specialize in civil rights violations. I was contacted by a mutual friend." Maya squinted, her voice hoarse. "Which friend?" Lauren smiled slightly, her eyes sharp. "Someone you once helped." There was no need for more explanation. Maya understood. In this world, kindness always found its way back when it was needed most. Lauren opened her leather briefcase, pulling out a USB drive and a stack of color-printed documents. She plugged the USB into a laptop at Maya's bedside. The screen lit up, showing a clear and shaky video recording from Maya's dash cam. Bloody scenes unfolded. Officer Jake Harlan drawing his taser and firing just as Maya raised her hands. Lila's heart-wrenching scream echoed, "Mommy! Stop! Don't hurt my mommy!" Maya gripped the bedsheet tightly, her nails leaving deep marks in the fabric. Lauren sighed. It's not just the car camera. A witness at a nearby gas station captured everything too. She placed another file folder on the bed. Sample complaint forms, a request for a criminal investigation, and a petition to prosecute the Toledo Police Department. "If you agree, we won't just sue the officer. We'll tear down the entire system that protected him," Lauren said, locking eyes with Maya. Maya looked down at Lila, who had fallen asleep again beside her, cheeks still wet with tears. A cold fury, sharp as a razor, spread through every cell of her being. Enough. No one had the right to force her daughter to witness her mother being treated like an animal. No one. Maya pulled out her IV drip, blood seeping from the needle, but she did not blink. "Where do I sign?" she asked. Lauren said nothing more, simply handed her a pen. "We will not settle," Maya whispered before signing. The signature of a mother, a warrior, a storm newly awakened. Outside the hospital, under a misty rain, Jake Harlan sat in his patrol car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, his lips pressed into a thin, angry line. "She thinks she's going to win?" Jake muttered, his voice choking with rage. "I'll show you what real law looks like." In his pocket, he clenched the key to access the police department's internal database. He had his own plan. But what Jake did not know was that from this moment on, he was no longer the hunter. He was the hunted. Toledo Police Department, 8:02 a.m. Jake. Harlan pushed open the door to the duty room, his boots thudding heavily against the worn stone floor. No one looked up to greet him. Only a few furtive glances and abruptly silenced conversations followed his entrance. The air was tinged with a cold metallic smell and a heavy sense of fear. Jake did not care. He believed that as long as he wore the badge, every storm would eventually bow to him. He flopped down into a chair, leaned back, propped his feet up on the desk, and pulled out his phone to scroll through the news. No news outlets had mentioned the incident yet. Not yet. He sneered. Those loudmouth women will shut up soon enough. What Jake did not realize was that even as he was laughing, a tidal wave was silently gathering outside, ready to swallow him whole. 9 a.m., a suburban cafe. Maya Bennett sat by the window, her brown hair tied neatly, her hands wrapped around a cup of hot latte. There was no longer any fear in her eyes, only a sharp, cold focus, as if her soul had been honed like a blade. Across from her, Lauren Price laid out a thick stack of documents on the table. "What do we have?" Maya asked calmly. Lauren smiled, listing the assets. The video from Maya's phone, clear, unedited. The full extraction of footage from the city-owned dash cam, a camera Jake did not even know Maya's SUV had. A witness, an Uber driver parked nearby, had captured Jake yanking Maya out and tasering her in front of Lila. Lauren tapped her fingers on the pile. 3 sources of evidence, undeniable. Maya gazed out the window, her eyes distant. He thinks he's untouchable. It's time he learns a lesson. 11:15 a.m., Toledo Police Department, private conference room. Jake stood before the electronic board, his face flushed with rage and barely concealed panic. "I propose we go on the offensive. Release my footage. Protect the department's reputation," he bellowed. Lieutenant Sanders stared at him thoughtfully. "Are you sure that footage will save you? Or will it only condemn you even more?" Jake clenched his fists. He did not know that the edited video he planned to release had already been intercepted by Lauren and could be used as evidence of tampering if he dared to make it public. It was a perfect trap, and Jake, blinded by arrogance, was walking straight into it. 1 p.m., Toledo City Hall. Lauren Price, clad in a sharp navy blue suit, strode into the deputy mayor's office. Beside her was Maya, dressed in a crisp white blouse, her face composed. Lauren slammed a stack of files onto the table. "We demand the public release of all camera footage related to the incident under the Freedom of Information Act and Ohio's transparency laws." The deputy mayor, a man currently campaigning for re-election, turned pale. One more scandal could destroy his career. He stammered, I will sign the release order immediately." 7 p.m., St. Vincent Hospital, recovery room. The hospital room was bathed in soft golden light as Lila colored vibrant butterflies in a new sketchbook. Maya sat by her bed, gently stroking her daughter's fine hair. "Mom." Lila looked up with wide eyes. "Why did that police officer hurt you?" Maya choked for a moment but smiled. "Because some people forget that their duty is to protect, not to hurt. But I promise you, Lila, I won't let it happen again. Never." Lila nodded and squeezed her mother's hand tightly. Amid scars and brokenness, a small flame ignited within Maya's heart, a flame that nothing could extinguish. Early the next morning, at the Toledo Police Department, Jake received a text from an unknown number. "Check your secondary bank account, hero." Frowning, he opened the link. His screen flooded with dozens of suspicious transactions, funds wired to offshore accounts, shadowy payments listed under logistics fees. Worse still, a copy of his bank records had been sent to the FBI. Jake felt the ground beneath him quake. He staggered against the wall, cold sweat dripping from his skin. No way," he whispered. But it was no longer about what was possible or impossible. Jake's nightmare had just begun. Toledo, Ohio, Lucas County Courthouse. A morning draped in a light drizzle. The air in the courtroom was as heavy as a thin mist, clinging to every breath. Jake Harlan sat silently at the defendant's table. His white shirt was wrinkled, the EEU collar unbuttoned, his face taut like a strained wire about to snap. For the first time in many years standing above the law, Jake no longer had the shield of his badge. All he had left was his small, naked, trembling self before justice. Across from him, Maya Bennett entered, holding tightly onto Lila, who hugged a small teddy bear close to her chest. Maya wore a simple gray dress, not flashy, but her presence caused the entire courtroom to hold its breath. A silent power, a cold storm. Behind her stood attorney Lauren Price, a sharp woman whose gaze seemed capable of piercing through concrete. At 8:47 a.m., Judge Elizabeth Monroe banged the gavel. The civil trial of Bennett versus Harlan is now in session. All eyes turned to Maya, yet she remained still, calm, like a warrior who knew that today it was poise that would kill arrogance. Lauren Price opened the argument, her voice firm. Your Honor, today, we are not just judging the individual actions of Officer Jake Harlan. We are judging an attitude that believes a badge grants immunity from consequences. But the truth, Your Honor, is that no one stands above the law. Evidence was presented one after another. Maya's dashcam footage showed no lane deviation, no speeding. The Uber driver's video captured Jake grabbing Maya by the collar, slamming her onto the curb, and tasering her as Lila cried in terror inside the car. Maya's phone video recorded her trembling yet steady voice asking why she was being stopped. Medical certificates confirm Maya suffered shoulder ligament injuries, and Lila required psychological therapy for severe trauma. The courtroom was silent. Only the soft patter of rain against the windows could be heard. Jake's face grew paler with each passing moment. Jake's lawyer, Ethan Kyle, tried to counter. Your Honor, Officer Harlan acted on reasonable suspicion based on his professional instinct. Lauren Price chuckled lightly and replied, Instinct does not justify throwing a mother to the ground. Instinct does not justify firing a taser in front of a 6-year-old child without legitimate cause. At the height of tension, Lauren pushed forward a thick file. Records from the DOJ show that over 7 years, defendant Jake Harlan had received 12 complaints including unnecessary violence, racial slurs, and abuse of authority, all of which were conveniently buried. A wave of shock rippled through the courtroom. All eyes turned to Jake, now devoid of sympathy, filled only with disgust. Jake sat there trembling. For the first time, he realized that the badge that once shielded him was now just a worthless piece of tin. Maya was called to the witness stand. She did not cry. She did not blame. She recounted every detail, every moment, with a calm voice that no one dared interrupt. I did not resist. I did not raise my voice. I only asked why. And in return, I was slammed to the ground, right in front of my terrified daughter. Maya paused and glanced at Lila, who was clutching her teddy bear tightly. She continued, her voice breaking only for a single breath. I stand here not just for myself. I stand for every mother who might not survive if they stay silent. Finally, the judge asked, Defendant Harlan, do you have any final words? Jake stood, his eyes wild with confusion. I was just following instinct. I didn't think. Maya looked straight at him, her gaze colder than steel. You didn't think. That's the problem. The verdict was delivered. Jake Harlan was permanently stripped of his police certification. He was ordered to pay $250,000 in damages to Maya Bennett. The case file was sent to the Department of Justice for consideration of separate criminal prosecution. Maya announced that she would donate most of the compensation to a fund supporting victims of police violence. Jake collapsed into his seat, head bowed. Maya did not need to celebrate. She simply squeezed her daughter's hand gently and walked out of the courtroom into the silent rain. At the end, still lingering on the cold wooden table, was a lesson. A badge does not make you invincible. It is how you treat others that determines whether you deserve to be trusted. Toledo, 6 weeks after the trial. House number 34 on Maple Street had a small front garden where a few lavender pots had just started to bloom. Maya woke up at 5 a.m., a habit ingrained from her days working ICU night shifts. She no longer had to save lives on operating tables, but now she was saving herself. On the old wooden kitchen table sat her laptop. On the screen was a flood of emails from nonprofit organizations, universities, and even a major newspaper from New York. They all wanted to interview her. They all wanted to hear about the woman who dared to take a police officer to court and win. But Maya did not respond. She did not need to become a symbol. She only wanted to survive. More importantly, she wanted to help others survive too. The following week, Maya founded a free legal aid foundation for victims of abuse by law enforcement agencies. She named it LILA, short for Lives in Light and Accountability. The logo featured a small hand gripping an adult's hand, reminiscent of the moment Lila had clutched her mother's hand after witnessing the taser assault. Within just 10 days, the foundation received over $80,000 in donations. Messages of support poured in from everywhere. A mother from Texas, a retired officer from Minneapolis, a 17-year-old girl wrote, "I was once dragged out of my car without knowing why. Now I know it wasn't my fault." Maya read each line and wept. For the first time in weeks, her tears were not from pain, but from hope. But darkness still moved quietly. Jake Harlan, stripped of his badge, did not go to prison. The court stripped him of his job and marked his record, but no criminal charges were filed. He disappeared from the public eye, but not from the world. Jake changed his name, shaved his head, and moved to a small town 2 hours from Toledo. There he joined an underground online group where those rejected by the system gathered, nurturing hatred, waiting for a chance to strike back. One Saturday night at 2 a.m., while Maya was checking her email, a new message arrived. No subject, no sender name, no signature, just one line in blood-red letters. "The court ruled, but I haven't. Signed simply J." Maya did not tremble. She did not panic. She simply walked to her daughter's room, opened the door slightly. Lila was sleeping soundly, hugging her bunny plushie, each breath steady and peaceful. Maya gently closed the door, then returned to the living room and started printing the email. 1 copy, 2 copies, 3 copies. She knew this was far from over. The next morning, Maya reported the threat to the police. Unlike the last time, she was not alone. With her were Marie Fan, a civil rights lawyer of Asian descent who had previously won a case against the Chicago Police Department, and retired Captain Al Jenkins, a veteran officer who had resigned in protest over misconduct cover-ups. They were not just friends, they were allies. This time, Maya did not come to ask for protection. She came to prevent others from falling victim to another Jake. Outside the police station, a crowd had gathered holding signs. "Lila is not just a child, Lila is a generation." The FBI picked up the warning from Maya and launched an investigation. They tracked the threatening email back to a public Wi-Fi network in a small town called Millbrook. Following the IP address, they found Jake. On his personal laptop, they discovered a detailed plan, scheduled appearance times for Maya at community events, layouts of venues, candid photos of Lila playing at a park. Jake was arrested. This time, there were no excuses left to shield him. No lawyer clever enough to cover up a planned violent act against a minor witness. But Maya did not seek revenge. The day Jake was led away in handcuffs, Maya did not smile. She did not clap. Instead, she wrote a handwritten letter to the presiding judge. "I do not ask for a harsher sentence. I do not demand pain for the one who caused mine. I ask for one thing only. Please do not let anyone like him think that losing a badge means they can erase their wrongs." One afternoon, Maya took Lila to the park. The little girl giggled as she slid down the playground slide. That laughter, Maya had once thought she would never hear again. Sitting on a stone bench, Maya wrote the first line in a book she planned to publish. One police officer believed his badge was a license for immunity, but he forgot one thing. Some women, when cornered, do not flee. They fight back with the truth. City of Cleveland, 3 months after Jake Harlan's sentencing. On the 5th floor of an old apartment building, a 19-year-old girl named Keisha Monroe was trembling, curled up in the corner of her bathroom. She had just been dragged out of her car by 2 police officers while she was driving her little brother to school. They claimed her car matched the description of a stolen vehicle. They did not apologize. They did not explain. They showed no hesitation when yanking her car door open and yelling at her as if she were a criminal. Her little brother Liam, only 9 years old, stood frozen on the sidewalk, tears streaming down his face. A witness captured the entire incident on video. The clip quickly spread. New hashtags began to appear. Justice for Keisha. Malik deserves better. Stop profiling. An email arrived at the LILA Foundation. Dear Ms. Maya, I don't know where to begin, but I saw the video about you. And I know that if anyone understands what it feels like to be humiliated in the street with no one stepping in, it's you. I don't have money to hire a lawyer. I don't have parents I can rely on. But I have the video, and I have faith in you. Sincerely, Keisha Monroe, 19 years old. Maya read the email in silence. She did not reply immediately. She simply sat quietly, closed her eyes. A child crying on the sidewalk. A girl disrespected because of the color of her skin. Once again, and again, and again. Maya opened a file cabinet, pulled out a folder labeled Case 027, reopened. She turned to Carla, the legal assistant at the foundation, and said, "We cannot save the whole world, but this time, Keisha will not be alone." Maya met Keisha at a small cafe near the community college. Keisha was petite, her eyes filled with fear but also hope. Maya did not immediately ask about the incident. Instead, she began with a different question. "Are you okay?" Keisha lowered her head, gripping her cup tightly. Maya remained silent, waiting. Finally, Keisha looked up and whispered, "No one has ever asked me that before. They only asked, 'Do you have a license?' Or, 'Did you resist?'" Maya gently held her hand. "Then let me be the first." The LILA Foundation organized a press conference. There, Maya did not tell her own story. She let Keisha speak. The footage of the incident was shown on a large screen. Maya stood quietly in the background. Unlike last time, she was not alone. A state senator appeared. An African-American police officer spoke out in support. 5 volunteer lawyers from New York, Los Angeles, and Atlanta showed up. The Lila Foundation was no longer a dream. It had become a weapon. Within less than 2 weeks, the 2 officers involved in Keisha's case were suspended. The city's police chief was summoned for a public hearing. The civilian review board of the city was reinstated. Keisha was invited to serve as a citizen representative on the board. From a trembling girl hiding in a bathroom to the voice of thousands of young people of color, it all began with a simple question: "Are you okay?" That night, Maya drove toward Indiana. She turned on the radio. A host was commenting, "From the Jake Harlan case to Keisha Monroe, one thing is clear. Not everyone who wears a uniform holds invisible power, and not everyone who is oppressed will remain silent." Maya smiled. In the rearview mirror, Lila was dozing off. Maya turned down the volume and whispered, "I won't stop, my little girl. Every case is not an ending. It's the beginning of a revolution." If you have stayed with this story until the end, you have walked alongside Maya, Keisha, and other courageous souls through some of the darkest moments. We live in a world where power is easily abused, where ordinary people like you and me are sometimes rendered invisible because of skin color, background, or status. But the truth is, we are not invisible. We have voices, we have choices, and we have each other. Maya is not a superhero. She is just a mother, a wounded woman who chose to stand up. Keisha had no power or wealth, but she had the truth and the courage not to remain silent. So do you. Remember this. When you see injustice, do not turn away. When you see someone being wronged, ask them, "Are you okay?" When you are pushed into darkness, remember, you are not alone. Change does not come from a single lone hero. It comes from ordinary hearts, brave enough to speak together. Sometimes the smallest act can light up an entire city.